Hello, and you're all very welcome to the second day of Bray Literary Festival. And I'm delighted to welcome three of the Doire Press authors, including founder and co-director John Walsh, and two of the newer writers to join the Doire stable, Linda McKenna and Aoife Reilly. And we'll be having readings from the three of them, followed by a discussion. So first up, Linda McKenna. Linda was brought up in Kinsealy, County Dublin, and now lives in Downpatrick. In 2018, she won the Seamus Heaney Award for New Writing and the Red Line Book Festival competition. Her work has been shortlisted for the 2017 Eyewear 12 Poems for Christmas competition. And in the Museum of Misremembered Things, which is published by Doire Press, is her debut poetry collection. So Linda, can I invite you to read for about 10 minutes for us, please?
That's great. Thanks very much, David. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for asking me. I'll be reading from my debut collection with all my stickies in it in the Museum of Misremembered Things. As you said, there is one of the Doire books that appeared in March. And I just start by thanking very much everybody at Doire Press, John and Lisa and Trina for the cover design, and the Arts Council of Northern Ireland for supporting the work. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to start with the title poem, In the Museum of Misremembered Things. In the Museum of Misremembered Things, the keeper writes a slanted hand, fine-nibbed copper plate tracking imagined lines of pink and blue. In lemon juice, this archive of unprovenanced vows, misheard names, missed cues. Someday she may rip out the pages, lay them flat, heat up the iron. For now, invisible, the lover picking out her name on snow so white it looked like truth, unbending wedding lilies, pearls for sorrow, tangled lace. She leaves space for days and dates mislaid or folded small in drawers of long-sewed, white-lined boxes. As you said, David, I was very lucky to win the Seamus Heaney Award for New Writing in 2018 with this poem, Overpainted, which is a poem inspired by a painting called Massacre of the Innocents by Peter Bruegel the Elder, a painting that was overpainted at some point in the 17th century when its message was politically no longer desirable. So this is Overpainted. It's a very wintry poem, so it's a nice day here, so apologies for it being a very wintry poem. Overpainted. Some journeyman, out of his apprenticeship, skillful enough to make the brush as sharp as a nib, drawing the tricky edges of feathers, detail of claws, softening it for curves and cloth. Good with colour, knowing a splash of red holds the eye, hides what shouldn't be seen. Under no illusion he can match the master's incomparable northern skies, in places thin to transparency, in others the thickly layered threat of more snow. The peculiar fluorescence in spreading grey slush, the precise folds of shawl, careless lacing of shirts. Neither did he touch the roofs, tucked in white blankets, tasseled with icicles. A child becomes a picture, richly glazed, about to be broken. A bundle unravelling from its bands of string, a calf big-eyed and trusting, a boar squealing, squabbling, but in the end easily caught. In piles they are magicked into turkeys still incongruous and exotic, prosaic local geese, except in a dark doorway where he leaves two, one dangling from a soldier's hand, and the girl offered now in place of a swan. I was saying to Nessa earlier, with the new restrictions in Dublin, I won't be able to get down to Dublin for my father's 80th birthday. So here are two poems inspired by my father, one based on a childhood memory when he worked on building sites in North County Dublin, and one a more recent one. So this is Clearances. Clearances. For a whole summer, my father worked somewhere between a crying shame and a mortal sin, riding off every morning to join the other hobnailed pillagers, stripping and ripping out huge plaster ceiling roses bordered with ivy and vines, chipping away at deep cornices and elegant picture rails, carting off loads of woodworm pitted mahogany newel posts, sweeping up acres of chandelier glass and oil lamp pendants. In the evenings, he conjured for us fabulous tales of spoiled and rotting opulence, brocade curtains hanging in ribbons, Persian carpets mildewed and stinking, stained glass bleeding into skips. Some things he couldn't help but rescue: stilts, a doll's house with real wallpaper, an improbable rusty sword, and best of all, thick rolls of draftsman's paper, where I drew the family trees of ancient European royalty, Ferdinand, Isabella, the not yet doomed daughters. Oncoming traffic. Although I'm middle-aged, my father still warns me about the traffic, hates the loop of my daily walk, which is not a level path following Malahide Strand as it becomes Portmarnock, or the tree-enclosed stroll through the castle, but a gasping almost run up and down hill, along a busy road, the uncut verges creating blind corners, leaving only a narrow space to squeeze myself into, away from the rushing cars. He says Downpatrick paths are rough and all aslant, wearing out shoes too quickly, forcing your feet into unusual angles. In vain, I tell him up and down hill is better for the lungs, the joints, pumps blood more efficiently, makes me fitter, that I always face the oncoming traffic, never go that way in the dark. He goes on fretting, the boy racers, the men in white vans, mobiles clamped to their ears, the women checking their mirrors for sleeping babies. They don't care about me, would see me in the ditch. He does, however, admit the yellow gorse that I now call whins, the meadow sweet and dog roses, the wild honeysuckle missing from his walks for years. When I moved house, I moved from a big house to a smaller house, and the thing I miss most is my utility room. I don't have a utility room anymore, so this is in the utility room. In troublesome times find sanctuary, round tower or pit, the bottommost cabin of a ship. Take to the empty road with your empty purse, your suitcase full of the wrong season's clothes. In troublesome times, hide yourself in the narrowest room of the house, barely space for the ironing board, the sweep of your arms over blouses, shirts, the lion's companion pieces. Consider the black and white cows, considering the sky, the blueness of the world, its greenness, the nearby yellow winds, the fading memory of the last cries of their calves. Concentrate on the smell of clean cotton rising with the steam, the speed with which you whip through pillowcases, the arms of the shirts neatly folded over the place where their hearts might be. A number of poems in this book are inspired by and based around a book written in 1744 called The Ancient and Present State of the County of Down, which is a survey of the county carried out by Walter Harris. So some of the poems have little epigrams. This is Ancient and Present, and the epigram is, she was alive the year King Charles was beheaded and says she's 95 or 96. She keeps a school for children. The women scour the trees of blood, rinse the rivers clean, rake the bones into dark corners, set the men's work of sowing, weeding, reaping, binding sheaves with plats of straw and hair plucked from rotting corpses. In spring, the world marches green and yellow. The men emerge, tender with their wounds, cradling babies and kindling. Plucking over crooked drills and unmarked boundaries, they find the whetstones, sharpen blades. The women turn to their prayer books and Bibles, rip out the blank pages, trim goose feathers into quills, open penny schools to teach. A stitch in time saves 9, no rose without a thorn, pride goeth before a fall. Anchor and anchor. The cloister folds itself in, a closed accordion of stacked pleats, sharp pressed edge to sharp pressed edge. Tomorrow, the day's wings will gather in battlefield stumps and mouldy barley, disobedient daughters, debt. Now is the time for the soul-facing window, a narrow point of lamplight where God swoops and soars. And behind the door, so secret it can hardly be seen, yawning, narrow-sleeved girls wait, goffering irons in hand. And I'll finish with the last poem in the collection, Unhinged. Unhinged. It is the fragile ribbon that holds everything together, carved ribs of ivory, convent lace, the smoothest silk, the very mechanism of fold and unfold. Without it, the ribs unhinge, find themselves in rusty biscuit tins, mixed in with postcards telling of trains to be met, brooches with no pins, the carver's teeming dreams of vine and fern, clogged with grease and dust. Childish fingers poke into the leaves, worrying tiny holes between rose and heart's ease. The busy enterprise of the fan, ivory hunter, Chinese carver, Belgian nun, is long bankrupt. With care and the exact breadth and weave of ribbon, you can rethread the fan. It will work almost like new, fold and unfold. But what would you do with it? Your dancing days far behind you. Thank you.
Okay, that's terrific. Some very, very powerful imagery in a lot of that. Looking forward to having a little chat about some of your themes and inspirations and things like that after we have the other readings. Okay, Aoife. So I'll give a little introduction to who Aoife is. Aoife Reilly grew up in Laois and lives in Galway. In 2018, she participated in an international artist-in-residency program at Officina Stamperia del Notaio in Sicily. She has been shortlisted in many competitions, including the Doolin Writers Competition and Over the Edge New Writer of the Year, both 2015 and 2018. Her pamphlet, Lilac and Gooseberries, was published by Lapwing Press in 2017, and Revolutions of Humming Things is her debut collection with Doire Press. So, Aoife, would you like to read some poems for us, please?
Great, thanks for having me, David, and excited to be reading with Doire Press. This is the book, Revolutions of Humming Things. So yeah, I'll read a few poems. This first one is called Aoife, and it's kind of inspired by the mythological character Aoife. I'm everything you don't know about me. I am what you see, what you get, and what you don't get. I am not a mother, lover, or sister, but millions of cells made from the grandmothers who walked in moontime across mountains barefoot, fondling the land that flickers in my eyes now and then. I am a warrior name sung into songlines, storylines, bloodlines, more than what I buy and less than you assume. I can be a pinch of sun that arrests you, or the unrest of leafy trees, waiting for the wind to knock me bare and unfold the season of in-between. I am everything you think you know. And the next couple of poems are sort of based on my ramblings around the Burren, which is my relatively new home. This is called Hole. I come from the ocean. You watch wind play on water. Together we age in this place of the ageless, map the galaxies with hazel wands, follow the sorcery of sorrow, primrose, gentian, rose, track life breaking through blue stone and walls that can't keep us from each other. These tributaries run over rock water light, where love is tinted in lime green stone, and everything must be broken to be made whole. And another sort of Burren poem, which is kind of a seasonal piece. It's autumn now. This is called Yield. You are stripping the last of the berries from the elder's purple branches. I am watching hawthorn release a crimson transfusion to hold us in the death of light. The leaves surrender despite us. White bean, gelder, rose, elder, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. These earth to sky maps we carry from the hedgerow to the table, with blackened hands in bowls of foraged faith. Me and you trying to gather what serves in the dark. Our lives a scattered asteroid. Between these fires, we will light in the night woods to catch that chat between wind and leaf, talking us through our creaks on the wheel. My struggle, your resistance, and these berries, from bud to bloom, reaching into the light behind the life. The yield of what was sown, the berries that answered a flower's prayer for fulfillment. This piece is kind of dedicated to passions in life. I read this quote. It's supposed to be from Dante's Inferno. It says, "Without hope we live on in desire." So here we go. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned, and long may it stay that way. Being blessed with a love of flesh, his and mine intertwined, loving layers of cash, rich cheese and ruby wine. Bless me for the times when I should have had more longing, more mistakes, and more bloody messing about in worlds bruised with chocolate and cherry swirls, which are too few and far between, Father. Bless me for the times I did not allow myself to be hoisted against the wall enough by the lover I was not supposed to have, which had incredible seasons of stolen moments, crazy kitchen dancing and singing. Bless me, Father, for without hope we live on in desire. And so I recently bought my home and some ground and became a kind of a relatively settled person. So these next couple of poems are about the ups and downs of that journey. This poem is called Genesis, and I wrote it after I read a poem by Caelan Hoyt. It's called God Says Yes to Me. Genesis. After the fifth hole on the second day, the god of the drill spoke. She said it was absolutely fine about the multiple injuries to the kitchen wall. Make as many holes as you need. And when I drove in that PZ2 screw, which seemed to hit major resistance, then proceeded to cover all extra holes with my origami fox, winking just over the biggest one, God said that was okay too. Be creative, why not? And when I cursed myself for not listening to anything mechanically related in school and called the wall stupid, which was followed by a bout of bitterness in the face of no rescue, she declared I should adopt an attitude of gratitude. Good that I didn't get electrocuted in the face of hardcore feminism with drill bits. She said it was okay to call that feminism too if I wanted. When I worried about the years of possible disasters to come, she just said, look, Loveen, in the beginning, light was day, dark was night. The vault between, a canvas destined for cracks. Go live your life. This is another piece based on my poor DIY and finding home. It's called Homing. It wasn't always about the red velvet curtains and the Bosch drill bits. There were more noble notions of home in my head. Foundations built on mulberry orchards, for instance. But when she handed me that gift, a sea stone with a perfectly sculpted hole, tied elegantly to a bundle of young feathers, I understood. To think I could have reached this point, convinced I'd felt everything a two-legged could feel. Remember the routes to fly, she wrote on the card. It took me many miles and most of my time to get here. Not to these walls and windows, not to the chairs or the chimney, but to no belonging made by rhythm at home with its own timing. Like Raven that morning, swinging around a half moon in the day bright blue. Cloudless worship of stone at the silver river, belonging to what we can't see or hear. And there is nothing more simple than this. Your heart hurting in the honesty of wild things. The sky changing to steel, chanting an invocation on the impossibility of yellow flowers and a grey wall. Because end of day, even with the curtains and drill bits, it's just you and that soundless winged being flying into the sun. And all we need is here. This is called Cosmic Kitchen. It's pretty self-explanatory. Someone once explained to me the swirl of Milky Way stretched across a ragged poster of the cosmos in my kitchen. The further we are from the Earth, he said, the faster time ticks. And if I'd stayed downstairs, I'd live a fraction longer. To the north, the poster revealed Virgo, Cygnus, and the Serpent. To the south, Centaur, Aquarius, and Noah's Dove. Myth maps to mark our human view of things on the pantry wall. Amid the cups and pots, I remembered that hunter's moon rising in August, with shooting stars spilling out of the sky so fast we couldn't make enough wishes to match their falling. Silver swords of hope, tumbling through a stream of sky dust. And in the kitchen of here and now, this magnet earth revolves around herbs and harvest, charting the celestial in potatoes and garlic, with Pleiades mapped in weeds and seeds. The sky doing what it must and what it should, pushing, pulling, igniting. From the perspective of the stars in my kitchen, all is well. So, last couple of poems now. This is simply called Prayer Poem, and I didn't have very many encounters with my granddad, but this is one which I remember quite vividly. My grandfather's stoic next to the fire in the mint green kitchen. Through a cloud of sweet afton smoke, we watched the autumn cool of White's meadow falling, thick and fast in the chestnut woods outside. I watched his ploughed face, story-lined eyes searching for me through the radio purr of the long-range forecast and scattered almanacs. I am at most 6 years old and wild with life. He asks me to pray for him when he dies. Will you? I do not really understand. He is translucent and seems to shrink towards his endless tobacco ash. I have never heard of prayer. I only hear his glassy voice holding the frailty of hope and regret, equal measures of tenderness and cracking. I say yes, absolutely yes, because he is falling, and somehow I know that I'm rising to the request of the dying, though I don't know how to pray. So I wrap his life in hayfields that climb to the sun, and in the ascent see all those between the worlds of now and then, how they cling us to promises, those generations who will not be forgotten. And it's the last poem now, so just thanks David and Tanya for the festival, and especially in these times we're in, and lovely to be reading with John and Linda as well. So this is called The Blue Bicycle. It's sort of a homage to growing up in the countryside in the height of summer. Nothing has guided me through life like my blue bicycle, teaching me about the edge, how to fall off the map and into nettles. My 8-year-old Wales, where I heard the sound of my own cry, realized the world is not flat. Since then, I've pedaled in and out of disasters, learned about the farthest reaches, fields beyond fields, great downhills, no hands, secret hideouts within and without. We still follow midsummer across the fields, watch the clouds throw themselves over our long shadows, freewheel through winking poppies, seeds bursting till the horizon swings around to meet us, and the revolutions of humming things remind me how everything goes back to the beginning. Thank you for listening.
Okay, that's terrific, Aoife. And again, a whole bunch of questions spring to mind in my head about some of the wonderful imagery and themes running through that. So before we get to talk about those, John, I believe you're going to read us possibly a piece of a story or prose. So I'll just give a little introduction to you, or I'm sure everyone doesn't need it. But anyway, John Walsh was born in Derry and lived in Germany 16 years before settling in Connemara in 1989. He has published 3 volumes of poetry, most recently Chopping Wood with T.S. Eliot, which was Salmon Poetry 2010. In 2012, he published Borderlines, his debut short story collection, awarded a publication grant by Galway County Council. He has read at events throughout Ireland, Europe and the States, and he is co-director of Doire Press. So John, can we invite you to read for us, please?
Thanks very much, David. That sounds like me, all right. Thanks a million to yourself and Tanya for inviting Doire Press to celebrate their 10 years anniversary. And to all the team there over in Bray at the Literary Festival, Nessa and Peter and Brian and whoever arrived from Cotton. We would have loved to have been there with you, but maybe the day will come.
Oh, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will.
So I'm going to read, as you say, from Borderlines, which was published in 2012 in the early days of Doire Press. And the story I'm going to read is Hawk. Hawk is a computer program which enables the pupils to make their own historical archives. And the story takes place somewhere in a secondary school, a fictional secondary school in south of County Derry. The main characters are the history teacher, Gemma. She's responsible for history and computer science. Sister Agnes is the head mistress and her deputy is Aidan. And then there's a nice character, the caretaker, who is also, as always, the most important person in the school. He's called Joe. And then there is the Minister of Education who is visiting the school to see the new computer room and how this new program Hawk works. Hawk. Gemma drove her blue Fiesta across the schoolyard to the back of the main building, where there was a makeshift car park for the teachers. She hadn't touched breakfast. She'd hardly slept for the past 3 nights. Sky News and History Channel kept her going. But it would be over soon. The ministerial car would roll off back to wherever the Department of Education was nowadays, and St. Enda's would go back to being an ordinary secondary school again. She gathered her things off the passenger seat and got out of the car. It was an undecided February morning, a frail sun struggling against thick swabs of cloud. She noticed Aidan was in ahead of her, his dark green Nissan tucked in the corner. He and Sister Agnes were the welcoming party. Sister Agnes all for tea and tennis, Aidan more into the Gaelic. He had often been in a tackle with the minister's brother. That was something for them to talk about. Everybody had some kind of reference point with the minister. She pulled the heavy fire door and walked into the back corridor. At the far end of the hall, she could hear the rumble of the ancient furnace. It took hours to heat the place up. She tiptoed past Aidan's office. If she ran into him, she'd have to listen to his plan of action all over again, where the minister would be and when, and who would be the next to be introduced to him. All the staff knew it off by heart. In her sleepless nights, Gemma had gone over her own plan, replaying it like a loop in her mind. Then she looked at the picture of her father on her bedside table, his immaculate, crisp, dark green uniform, his smile, and she repeated to herself, there was no going back. The computer room was on the first floor, in the south of the building. Gemma threw her bag onto the console desk and relaxed into her swivel chair. She was 28, and this would be her last year at St. Enda's. She wanted to take a year off, go somewhere she would never go in her whole life. Lots of people her age did it. Africa, India, who knows? She was scared she was in a rut. If she didn't take her chance now, she might never do it. She'd meet someone. They'd get a year or 2 out of it, then settle down together. She was too young for that. She reached down and pressed the main button. Instantly, the room came alive with a chorus of state-of-the-art computers. This is where she would meet the minister. Sister Agnes and Aidan would bring him here. The official speeches would be over. All that remained was for him to see the computer room. Miss Dowling, the caretaker's voice startled her. All set? I'm nervous as hell, Joe. Couldn't sleep a wink last night. Gemma smiled at him. You look very smart. Orders from the chief. No going against them, you know. Anyway, is there anything I can do? I think we're grand, Joe. I just need to make sure they're all working. Do you think the minister knows much about computers, miss? None of my business what he knows, Joe. What about yourself? Not a clue, miss. The young lad has one, does all his schoolwork on it. You can find anything you want on it, he tells me, but it's way over my head, you know. You know what I mean? Ah, you'd be well able for it, Joe. If you have the time some afternoon, I'll give you a crash course. Gemma buttoned up her jacket and came out from behind the desk. Here, take a look at this. Tell me something you'd like to find out, something that happened years ago, maybe. What kind of thing, miss? Anything you want. Joe bit on the inside of his lip. What year Bobby Charlton captained Man U in the European Cup? The year they won it. There's a good one for you. So, you see this. You click on this, put in Man U Bobby Charlton, then click search. They both watched the screen flicker and change. 25,900 results, Joe. Everything you ever wanted to know about Bobby Charlton right there. We haven't got time now, but it's in there somewhere. It was 1968, miss. Joe laughed. I was only checking on you. You're a flying man, Joe. You don't need me to tell you anything. Joe was pleased with himself. Will you be down to see the minister arriving, miss? I still have a couple of things to do, and by the time I get the class settled in, he'll be here anyway. We have to make it look like we know what we're doing with these new computers, after all the money we got from them. A pilot project for what is it again? If you don't mind me asking, Joe was very slow to leave. For historical archives. It's called HAWK, so the youngsters can learn history themselves. They won't need me to teach them anymore. I might as well pack up and go home now. Beats me so it does, he said. At least I'll still have a job. Aye, Joe, a truer word you never said. Gemma waited till the caretaker left, then ran quick check. Everything showed up ready to go. All the kids had to do was key in HAWK. The program would open up on 20 stations, each with its own individual project to work on. She pressed enter on her own computer. A large silver hawk flew in a direct line across the screen, its broad wings flapping, its beads of eyes focused on hers. When it settled on a perch above the search box, she typed in the minister's name. And here we are, Minister, in our state-of-the-art computer room. Sister Agnes's voice was purposely loud. Everyone made motions to rise. Don't let me disturb you, the minister told them. Please go on with whatever you're doing. I won't be in your way for long. He was less impressive than he looked on television. Smaller build. His voice was thin, not forceful. Miss Dowling is our history and computer teacher, Sister Agnes went on. We all rely on her expertise. The minister approached Gemma's desk and offered his hand. Nice to meet you, Miss Dowling. Gemma shook the minister's hand. And you, Minister, are you happy with the new computers? Do they meet your needs? Most certainly. We're in a league of our own now, Minister. And the program HAWK, what exactly does it entail? What can the pupils do with it that makes it so new? Basically, it's a history archive program which allows the pupils to tap into all the available archives on the web. Gemma knew that it sounded textbook. The exciting part and the advantage for the pupils is that they can make their own historical archives. They can collect all the information themselves from a variety of sources. The HAWK program will only accept the information if it has validated the accuracy. It disallows inaccuracy. Sounds very clever to me, the minister said. He pulled in a chair in front of her screen and sat down. Can you show me how it works? What do I have to do? Gemma pulled her chair in beside the minister. You key in your name, Minister, and see what comes up. I think I've a pretty good idea of my own history. The minister smiled at her the way she had seen him do so often on television. Then take my name, she told the minister. D-O-W-L-I-N-G. The minister spelled it out as he typed it in. First name, Pat, Gemma said. P-A-T. We have a daughter, Pat. The picture of a young man in a dark green uniform appeared on the screen. Gemma kept her eyes on the minister while he silently read the text beneath the picture. She knew it by heart. Constable Pat Dowling, shot Londonderry, January 1972. Married with one daughter, aged 4 months. She watched for anything that the minister's face might betray. The minister turned to look at her. This is your father? Yes. I'm very sorry. Why do I have difficulty believing that, Minister? Gemma wished her voice would sound more angry, but it didn't. The anger she had rehearsed so many times was missing. Miss Dowling, I think we've heard quite enough. Sister Agnes stepped towards her. It's all right, sister. Miss Dowling has the right to her feelings. I never knew my father. He was only 21 when he was shot. Much the same age as you were at the time, Minister. Gemma felt the force coming back into her words. Minister, I think we should leave now. I apologise for Miss Dowling's behaviour. Mr. Gallagher, will you look after Miss Dowling, please? Gemma stood at the window in Aidan's office, watching the cars drive away. Why did you do it, Gemma? Sister Agnes will never forgive you. She'll crucify you. She knew Aidan was trying to be easy on her. You won't get the chance, Aidan. I'm leaving. Oh, thanks for letting me know. She had caught him off guard. But what was the purpose of it? What were you trying to prove? To prove? Gemma turned around from the window to face Aidan. He was a caring sort of person, no match for Sister Agnes. He would be one of the people she would miss. The programme has nothing to do with proof. It's about facts, Aidan. Historical facts. It validates their accuracy. That's all it does. It doesn't prove anything. The way he looked at her, she knew that she hadn't got through to him. You know, Aidan, he wasn't the monster I always imagined him to be. I couldn't even hate him as much as I thought I would. He paused. Do you know what struck me the most? The smell of his aftershave. It was too much. Sitting there beside him, I found it overpowering. I wanted to say it to him, but I had to keep reminding myself, this is the minister. Funny, isn't it? Can I go back to my class now? Yes, of course you can, if you think you're all right. I am, Aidan, thanks. I'm all right. Aidan's phone rang. His eyes automatically checked the display, and he didn't pick up. Before she closed the door behind her, Gemma heard it click to answer, and the cackle of Sister Agnes's voice. Thank you.
Okay, great, very evocative, powerful story about the dangers of memory and history and things like that. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about, to both Linda and Aoife, about their debut collections. Two very resonant titles, I have to say, in the Museum of Misremembered Things and Revolutions of Humming Things. Maybe I'll start with you, Linda. You have a very striking image from the poem Unhinged, talking about the fragile ribbon holding things together. And I wondered, in terms of this particular collection, what is for you the fragile ribbon that holds things together?
I suppose a lot of my poems are based around or inspired by either historical events or people from history or historical documents. So I suppose history is a fragile ribbon that holds things together and very often frays and breaks and splits and rips. I suppose, responses to history, maybe, that, you know, we hold things together in our responses, which are obviously not always accurate or clouded by emotion or perspective or whatever. So I suppose, yes, for me, history is that fragile ribbon holding things together. I also, you know, I work in the museum, I work with objects. So to me, the actual objects are very resonant as well. I like poems full of things. I like lots of things in poems. And I think very often when you interrogate an object, whether it's intact or broken or fragmented, that gives you a way into looking at things as well, and gives you a way into history too. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I was thinking that along with history, you've got the idea of memory, you've got the idea of different layers of memories coming in, you've got the idea of fragments. They're definitely all there. I was very interested about the word misremembered.
Yes.
To what extent are these things misremembered? It's fascinating.
Yes. Yeah, I think misremembering something is very different to forgetting something. Obviously, you know, forgetting is a misremembering is a deliberate act, and we do misremember things, not just accidentally but deliberately. I think as well, and I think in our society, especially in Ireland, I think we are surrounded by misremembered history and misremembered things that we hold on to, that we hold very dear. So we don't actually sometimes care if things are accurate. We prefer our myths, and we prefer our misremembered things. But obviously we misremember things from our childhood, from our own experiences and lives too. So, you know, you'll find maybe, you know, my sisters and I might have different memories of the same things. We've all misremembered the thing, but that can be very resonant and very productive of discussion as well. But I suppose a lot of these poems were written around the time when we were all doing that decade of centenaries, which we're still in, obviously. And I was very conscious that a lot of history was being misremembered. It wasn't being, we weren't going back and looking at things accurately like Hawke does. We were actually creating, you know, more misremembering. We were actually glorifying and celebrating a lot of misremembering, which I found very troubling. So I do think we live in a very misremembered society, misremembering society.
Yeah, and just before I move to Aoife, and I'll be asking you the same question, it's very interesting, I think, that both of you have made a significant move. You moved from County Dublin to Downpatrick, Aoife moved from Laois to Galway, and in some way both your collections are talking about the new home that you found and exploring that home place and so forth. You know, it's very interesting in common. I was interested in yours, Linda, that particularly this 1744 County Down, the Walter Hertz thing and all that. They were almost like a series of woodcuts almost. Are these also misremembered histories, I wondered?
Yes, I mean, Walter Harris had a very particular, you know, thing that he was doing in producing this book. He was, you know, wanting to see County Down as being very civilized and advanced, thanks to lots of new people who'd come in and made it very civilized and advanced. And so it was a very political. It was a very political survey. It wasn't necessarily entirely accurate either. I suppose what I liked about that book was that actually it reminded me a lot about growing up in North County Dublin, and County Down is very similar to County Dublin in some ways. It's really the way that sort of the Pale extended up. And I remember when I lived in Fermanagh for a while, somebody saying to me, the real difference in Ireland isn't between the Republic and Northern Ireland. It isn't between North and South. It's between East and West. And I do think there's a lot of truth in that actually East Ireland is very different to the West of Ireland. So in many ways, County Down is not that different, especially Cale, where I live, which was an area of a lot of Norman influence. So this part of County Down is not very different to North County Dublin in many ways. Obviously, in other crucial ways it is. And the landscape, although it's very, very hilly here, you know, the same kind, you know, I walk past the same kind of things when I'm walking in Malahide or walking in Downpatrick, cricket grounds and castles, and you know, it's very similar in some ways. So yes, obviously it's a new home and a new place, but there are lots of things that carry over as well.
Okay, yeah, tremendous. Thanks for that. Aoife, revolutions of humming things. What is it for you that makes things hum?
Yeah, I suppose like all my poems are sort of nature based. Well, a lot of them are kind of nature connection based, and that's probably a big part of my life, kind of rambling around the land and exploring crevices and rocks and, you know, flowers and trees and all of that kind of things. But I suppose as well, just, you know, how the cycles of life kind of, how you meet nature, your place in the land, and how place affects the way you home in life, I suppose, you know, and who you meet, the ins and outs of things, the ups and downs of relationships. They all have their own kind of individual home, I suppose. So a lot of my places and that I write about, I suppose, are, you know, how landscape kind of affects the psyche and how that holds you in whatever kind of state you're going through in your life home.
Yeah, I got the impression as well. You're talking about the revolutions of humming things, and I was thinking of a spinning top, but a lot of your poems give the idea of the cosmic or cycles, or even the Aoife mythology. They seem to connect to the bigger cosmos in some way.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose over the years I've realized that, like, the most simple things are often the most kind of universal or cosmic things. You know, you could be, that's, I suppose, that poem Cosmic Kitchen is a bit about that, you know, when you're doing a banal activity in life and suddenly you kind of realize, I don't know, maybe have a little realization that someone else is doing this somewhere else in the world, or thinking about the same things as you, or, you know, that the simplest things in life can be the most profound. You don't have to go to, I don't know, an ashram in India. You could, well, I don't know, I think Ram Dass, that teacher, says, go and live with your family for a week if you want to be enlightened. Like all the small, or the things that you don't think are very special or profound, they can often have the most impact on you, isn't it? So that's it. Or I suppose as well, just kind of living in big nature all the time. I'm always outside, so I'm always looking at the stars or looking at interconnections between things. So that's it. Yeah, but I kind of like to bring the two together, the banal and the heavenly.
You have a couple of, again, very, very interesting thoughts or phrases from your Burren poems. And of course, the Burren is your new home. From home, you have everything must be broken to be made whole, which is a very interesting idea.
Yeah.
But also, the other one that I thought was fascinating in Yield, you talk about the chat between wind and leaf. And that's a lovely idea of what a poem is. A poem is the chat between wind and leaf, how the mind and the object interact. They're lovely ideas. So, yeah, some terrific stuff there. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about the Burren, just as your new home?
Yeah. I mean, I lived in Dublin, Wicklow, and some places in the Southern Hemisphere before I got to here, but I really love, I mean, there's lots of poets in the Burren in a way, you know, it's just a really magical place. And I think the limestone is just really special. Like, if you go out into the mountains, there's so much space, you can kind of hear the chat between wind and leaf, I suppose, you know. It just gives you that, it's got a special quality. I think that's it. It's kind of got its own personality or something like that, the Burren. Like Connemara has its own feeling as well when you're in the granite and the bog and that kind of sensation. But the Burren is kind of more a porous place. Like, you can kind of feel, I don't know, there's a certain feeling that it holds. And there's kind of like got an old feeling when you look around and you find the little fossils and you think, wow, this was the bottom of a tropical sea once upon a time. And that's sort of inspiring in itself, you know, to be walking at the bottom of a tropical sea. So it's kind of, it's just a magical, creative place to be in. I'm really lucky.
Of memory and things like that is fascinating, I think. Yeah, lovely. Just before we move to talk to John, I asked you both to think maybe about poets that you are influenced by, or that you recommend, or that you read. I'm always horrified when I teach a lot of creative writing, and if people want to do poetry and I say, well, who do you read? Oh, I don't. How can you possibly write poetry if you don't read poetry? So what sort of poets would you both have in your canon of poets, I suppose, that you go back to?
I'll go first, I don't mind. Or Linda? Yeah. Go back to Kim Adenizio a lot at the moment. She's a big fan of hers, and I think she's so sassy and passionate about life. I love the way she relates to things. And Sharon Owes,
Okay.
big fan of hers. I like her emotional honesty. It's really inspiring. And I don't know if you know Joy Harjo. She's a Native American poet, but she plays some music with her poems as well. And yeah, she's a really interesting lady. She writes stories as well. They're my top three at the moment anyway. I had a baby recently, so my brain is slightly not on 100%, but they're my top three.
Terrific. Okay, thanks, Aoife. And Linda?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I suppose I'm quite traditional in the poets that I go back to again and again. So I'm a big fan of Kathleen Raine. I love her poems. I've been reading a lot more of Anne Boland this year, and obviously a big fan of hers too. I love Christina Rossetti. I mean, I don't write formal or rhymed poems at all, but I do love Rossetti's poetry, and there's just something about it that I find very appealing. So yeah, Kathleen Raine and Christina Rossetti, Van Boland. I also like John Donne, so probably from school, having to do lots of John Donne in school. So I love his poems too. But in terms of contemporary poetry, one of the collections that I go back to again and again is Sacha Dugdale's Red House collection. I think it's about 2011, especially the Red House sequence of poems. Those poems which are just called Red House, and there's about 10 of them. I think they're just amazing. They're absolutely amazing, and they're just full of incredible imagery, and I really love that collection. I would go back to that again and again. Yeah.
Terrific. Okay, thanks, Linda. John, 10 years of Doire Press. Were you mad to start this up?
No, definitely not. No, it's been a great journey, and it still is. The thing is, we didn't start it up. It kind of grew organically. It was way back in I think it was 2007, I think, when I got a grant from the County Council, Galway County Council Arts Office for my second poetry collection this one year, and Lisa had just finished her MFA. Lisa Frank, my partner, who has just in the COVID scene become my wife. Lisa had done her MFA, and she also had worked for a literary journal in the States up in Oregon. And we said, let's do it ourselves. So that was our very first book. But we went on then to publish people we like, people like Jerry Galvin and Micheál Carney. His book Inheritance is still one of my favorites. And all of a sudden we found people around us taking us seriously. And we thought, oh, well, we better start.
Sorry. Beg your pardon. Pardon.
That bit.
That bit will be cut out.
Yeah, sorry, he goes crazy when the doorbell goes.
Oh, right. No, as I said, people started taking us seriously, and we thought, okay, we better start taking ourselves seriously. And we started approaching to the Arts Council, who have been very good to us over the years, and it just sort of grew, and it's been a great trip.
What would you say the main challenges are these, like over the last 10 years? Is it to do with distribution? Is it to do with funding? Is it to do with? I mean, I imagine there's no shortage of people submitting quality work to you.
No, there's no shortage. No, yeah, well, we know, like when we started out, we chose short story collections, mostly debut collections, and poetry collections, mostly debut. And we knew at that time from the beginning that there was no money in it,
Sure, yeah.
We would have been much more sensible going out and getting a good, decent day job. And but we both write ourselves, as you know, and we were both very interested in this. And the debut side of it is great. There's nothing more wonderful than sending off a debut poet or short story writer her first collection, and it's a great thing to bring joy, or to be the co-bringer of joy into the world. And in the old days, we used to do this in person, and it was great to see the smile on someone's face when you handed them their first collection. So there's a lot of positive feeling going around in the press. And of course, distribution is a difficult thing because, you know, as I say, poetry is a hard sell, short story collections also. But over the years, we have built up a very strong network of shops all around Ireland. And we get a constant sort of source of orders from these shops when they know that we have a new collection. So we can just sort of approach them. So it's working. It takes time. You have to build up your name. You have to prove yourself, you know, your quality, your choice of authors and writers. But you know, at the point where we are now, it's all been worth it, really. You know.
And has this been a challenging year, just in terms of not being able to have live launches? And
oh no, it's been great.
Lockdowns.
Holiday. We've just been having a holiday. No, it's been a disaster. It's been an absolute disaster. I mean, none of our books have been launched. We've had you know, our books in the north started the year off with Rosemary Jenkinson's second collection and Linda's collection, her debut collection. And we were all set, you know, we were ready to put the boxes into the car. And then we get from the word from the Irish Secretariat, which we actually were expecting, no, it's not happening. Yeah, we're just sort of hoping something will change, you know, and we've all become very computer savvy now, thanks to others. But there's nothing like a real launch, you know, sweaty people drinking, you know, and talking and bumping into each other and buying books, actually buying them, you know. So if anybody wants the odd book, we still have a few here.
And then I suppose the final question I'd like to put to you, I'm imagining some of the people watching this may be hoping to submit either a short story debut collection or a poetry debut collection to you. Would you have any sort of advice as to what might make something stand out from, I'm sure you get hundreds of submissions every year. What would make something stand out? Is it a track record? Is it that it's put together with care? Is it the cover letter? What are the important pointers for you?
Well, yeah, that's a difficult one. Well, I mean, as you say, it has to, basically the submission has to stand out. So I would give the advice that, you know, especially for debut writers, never rush into this. You have to spend a long time honing your craft and submitting to journals and getting feedback from peers in workshops. I mean, as you said a while back, it's amazing that a lot of people who write don't read others. And that's something which is so important, that you have to read your contemporary fellow writers and see what's happening. And then whenever we have a submission, we have to see that, yeah, this person has honed her craft or his craft and has put in the apprenticeship. Really, you have to put in your apprenticeship. And so there's a certain degree of excellence in the work. But then there has to be that added extra, that's something special, that's something unique, which is you, which we cannot define, you know, you can't define it, but it has to be, the work has to be excellent, and then something, that's something extra. And that's what sort of clinches the deal. So it's like anybody else, you have to do your apprenticeship, you have to do the work, and don't rush into it. And when you're ready, and you have had the feedback from your peers, and they say, yeah, time to go, then write that submission letter and just sort of learn how to sell yourself. You have to be able,
yeah. Okay, terrific. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. It's been very enlightening, and two wonderful debut collections. I'm sure there'll be more wonderful debut collections wending the way to Doire Press after this, John. So sorry about your inbox and all that. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. Thanks very much, David.
Apologies about the dog.
Lovely to see you, Aoife and John.